So let's start by talking about your big policy announcement today, the idea of this Robin Hood tax on financial transactions in the city. Now, I can see why you want to do this politically, punish those nasty rich bankers who caused the financial crash. But economically, it's pretty risky, isn't it, at a time when, because of Brexit, banks are threatening to move abroad to places like Paris or Frankfurt?
It's not about punishing bankers or anything like that. It's simply correcting, tackling a couple of loopholes that there is in the existing system. We've had stamp duty on shares for 300 years, and individuals trading those shares pay 0.05% of a tax on them, stamp duty on them. Hasn't applied to banks and hedge funds and others. And in addition to that, it hasn't applied to the derivatives markets in terms of basic credit and equity, and it hasn't applied to corporate bonds either. So we're tackling a loophole here. Now, the issue, I understand what you're saying about the issue of, does this mean that these transactions will move elsewhere? Well, it's interesting because, one, Europe are now developing their own financial transaction tax.
But that has been stalled.
Well,
that's the point,
that's interesting.
It has stalled.
That's interesting. The story that it is stalled is 2 years old. Last October, it moved dramatically forward. 10 countries signed up, and they're expecting to introduce it this year. In addition to that, this is nothing new. This idea has been around for a long while. I've been campaigning for it for over 15 years. In fact, Hillary Clinton included it in her Democrat Party manifesto as well. All we're trying to do is correct a loophole. This isn't about punishing anyone, but it is about saying to the banks and the hedge funds that actually, where they're speculating, the most risky speculation in derivatives, we want them to make a contribution. Just a fair contribution, very small. We're saying 0.02%, not even the same level as other transactions.
Well, one person who disagrees with you on this is Labour's Mayor in London, Sadiq Khan. We'll have a look at what Sadiq Khan has previously said about this. People will just go to other parts of the world where there is no financial transaction tax. And he also described the idea as madness. And you can see why, because in the year to March 2016, the City of London contributed 11% of all tax revenue.
Yes,
I mean, that's a big gamble.
It is, but we're talking to a tiny fraction more. And when Sadiq was saying that, at that point in time, the European system had stalled. It hasn't now. It's moved on quite swiftly. So I think circumstances have changed. Now is the right time to do it. This is a small transactional tax. We're asking a small contribution from the city. Look, we bailed out the city 10 years ago when the crash came. We poured hundreds of billions of pounds into it. Since then, £100 billion has been given out in bonuses in the city. So we're asking for a small contribution to them. What to do? To fund our public services, to make sure our children are educated, to make sure we have a decent health service. It's not much to ask,